Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Omega Insight. As a reminder, we have an Omega 1 scheduled for September 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. Go to the Omega website, you can register from there. Tonight's topic is about reverence, living our lives with the idea of reverence. Now, I am a fan of books, naturally, and I've been reading The Seed of the Soul by Gary Zukave. It's an older book, but somehow I like that older books. The teachings never change, honestly. And he has a whole chapter based on reverence. And when I think about reverence, the first thing I think of often is the idea of like when I grew up as Roman Catholic, reverence was often considered a religious, like you have to be reverent when you walk into the church. And we had our play clothes and our church clothes. And reverence is related to a level of respect. So, in the definition, reverence is actually considered as a noun, it's a deep respect for someone or something. And as a verb, it's actually the regard or to treat with deep respect. When I think about that, I think of Native American traditions. You're always supposed to honor the elders. I remember a movie, The 12 Angry Men, with Henry Ford. Old movie. I said Henry Ford. That's funny. Not Henry Ford. I'm going to forget the guy's name now just because I said Henry Ford. But it's an old black and white movie where it's called 12 Angry Men. It's a really, really good movie. Henry Fonda is the gentleman's name. And in one of the scenes, there was a younger guy who was like kind of bullying an older gentleman. And one of the characters said, "Hey, that somebody is an elder and you respect your elders." And I remember that was a very impactful scene to me because I think sometimes we forget everything that our elders have gone through. And, we just see them as an inconvenience, especially now our older generation is living longer. And so many of my friends are having to deal with ailing parents, including us. My husband's parents are Alzheimer's and dementia. It's there. So anyway, it's to be reverent and not consider them as an inconvenience, but to be respectful of the life that they've led. Now, that's not just what I want to talk about. I want to speak about the idea of being reverent. We can be respectful occasionally. At least I hope we can be respectful occasionally. But I'm thinking more along the lines of making reverence a part of our life every day, and not just being respectful, a deep respect. It has to be a choice to be a reverent individual. So in the book, there's a couple of things that he said that I'd like to just mention. He said reverence is a level of protection and honor about the process of life. So we are being reverent about life itself, and without the idea that we know better. So we are judging why this is happening, why that's happening, and essentially we don't. We just are reverent about life and the way life is unfolding. It's um it's an attitude of honoring life. That's what Gary Zukov writes. It's the attitude of honoring life, not assuming or presuming that I know better, but I'm honoring the way life is unfolding. Um, a couple of weeks ago, I talked about the sense of direction and how we have five senses as a physical human being, and there's other senses that are higher than us. And Gary Zukov also speaks about that reverence actually exists above our five senses. It doesn't have anything to do with the physical sensation of touch, sight, sound, taste, and smell. It has nothing to do with that. It comes more from, at least he says, it comes more from the spirit. It's a decision from our soul that we want to be a more spiritual individual. And I think about that when I think about spiritual individual ones that I've read about or some that I've actually met, they are very reverent individuals. And I'm not talking about the charlatans that pop up just to raise money. I mean, truly, genuinely spiritual individuals who are compassionate and their sole purpose is to make a contribution to humanity. They require the characteristic of reverence as part of their chemical being or who they are. Um, and so, what does it mean to be reverent? So, as I said, it's not just being respectful, but it's honoring, being an honoring individual. Um, And as I said before, it's essentially a decision that has to be made that you want to become a more spiritual individual. Um, it doesn't mean that you want to be walked all over because sometimes that's what people assume. But when it comes to being a spiritual individual, we strive as an individual striving to be a spiritual person, we seek for ways to become better, to elevate ourselves from the anger and the judgment and resentfulness and rise above that so that we reach a place of peace and compassion and love. He actually says, without reverence, our experiences are brutal and destructive, which I agree. When we are not being respectful of not only life, but people in our lives, of certain situations, we become very destructive. We can destroy relationships. We're destroying the planet. We can destroy a work environment. We can destroy any environment, our communities, when we are angry and upset. I mean, political system aside, look at our country. It's very destructive right now because we're not being reverent anymore. And I don't want to get political. I know everyone's got a voice, and that's not what I mean. What I'm looking for is the lack of reverence, the lack of understanding that everyone has a position and I don't need to argue with you just because there's a position being stated. I remember one time and took my family to New York. We were out to New York, and one of my uncles, we were talking, and I said, they were ordering for the table, and I said, "Oh, I'm a vegetarian, I'm a vegan," and he goes, "Oh, don't tell me you're one of those people who are crying because you don't want to kill the animals and everything." And I didn't get upset. I just said, "No, actually, I feel better when I don't eat meat physically. My body, I just feel better." And we let it subside. And later on, my daughter said to me, how come you said that? Because you don't eat meat because you don't want to kill people or kill things. And I said, well, that's true, but I don't need to argue over it. And I don't have to defend myself. They have their position, and I don't need to get into an argument over it. That's their position. So I said the thing that was the least offensive. I mean, that's the idea of being reverent. You can even be compassionate to those who are, he wasn't trying to be aggressive. He was just stating his point of view, as many New Yorkers do. Just kidding. Don't be offended. I'm a New Yorker. I'm allowed to say that. Anyway, the idea was when we were talking about it, I simply explained to my daughter, everyone has a point of view. I just don't have to get into a fight over it. I can honor somebody else's point of view is different than mine. And even if they disagree with me, I don't have to spend the energy to defend my point of view. So I chose to say, which was still true. I do feel physically better. I didn't lie. I feel physically better not eating meat. That's my choice. I don't have to make it somebody else's choice, and I don't have to wave a flag and take the position. That's just my prerogative, I guess is the way I would best say it. And to me, that's what I'm thinking of is not saying that that conversation was brutal and violent, but I didn't need to engage in a conversation where there clearly was a judgment. Instead, we just shifted the conversation to something else. And honestly, I don't remember what the conversation went to. I just remember I didn't want to engage in that. And we have a choice of doing that because when it comes down to reverence, our experiences really do come down to being compassionate and caring. I could actually be compassionate and caring to somebody who has an opposite point of view as me. I don't need to get in their face and make them agree with me. Okay, that's your point of view, and that's fine. We will come to honor all of life. We're going to eventually, hopefully, coming to honor all of our life. And that's the idea. We want to have reverence with that. So, reverence doesn't mean that I get in your face and tell you how it is. And I actually don't even tell you, or don't even have the need to explain to you why you should be reverence. It's a personal position, it's a personal point of view. It's something to strive for. Of course, naturally, that's what we talk about in Omega, the things that we're striving for and how to be a better human being. And reverence is one of those steps. It must be a conscious decision and it must be done at all times. Now, am I successful as this at all times? Absolutely not. Of course not. It's the idea of being conscious. Matter of fact, I remember I was thinking last week, oh, I'm going to apply the no complaining rule because, I just talked about it. I'll apply it on Tuesday. I caught myself several times and oh, no. And I did the but then and added a positive to the negative. But on Thursday and Friday, I was so exhausted and overwhelmed and rushed and stressed, and I didn't care. And I knew I was being critical. I knew I was being judgmental, at least Actually, I'll take that back. I didn't know that until the end on Friday night when I sat and thought about my day. I went, oh my gosh, I just went off the deep end on that because I really was, I'm texting, and that's not being reverent at all. That's being reactive, which is quite the opposite. So I'm not successful at all times. But the thing is that I strive to be successful. And that's the only thing that we can hope for is to strive. I have a point that I'm striving towards. And hopefully you're having the same point. The idea that we don't learn this stuff just to learn it and file it away in the back of my mind. I don't read all these books just to learn it and sound educated. It's to apply it. So it's got to have the information and then the application. I must apply what I'm learning. Otherwise, I'm wasting, for me personally, I feel like I'm wasting my time. So, reverence is something to apply, but it has to be a choice. And it's a hard one. It's a hard one to be reverent towards someone, especially someone you violently oppose. That didn't sound right. Somebody violently opposed, you don't want to have violently opposed inside of you. It's a difficult choice when someone has an opposition to you and they are violent, and you want to make sure that you are not being reactive to them. Naturally, I'm talking about missing our words and emotions. I'm not speaking physically. This is more above, being above, higher. So again, the book is called The Seat of the Soul, which is a good book. I would recommend this to read. He wrote The Dancing Woolly Masters, which I loved. I mean, I think I read that in one day. It was a very good book, many, many, many years ago. And the concept of reverence. So this week, therefore, I would challenge you to see if you can catch yourself and be reverent. And even if you understand the idea of being reverence, it's that deep respect and honoring life. Whoever stands before you, whatever situation you find yourself in, to be reverent, to rein the judgment in, rein reaction in, and come from a place of compassion and peace. And see if you have a different experience throughout your day. That's all I have to share with us today. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to seeing you next week. In August, I can't believe we're about ready to go into August. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and I will talk to you soon. Bye now.